In this video, I explain the best equalizer settings to use for different types of music when you're using the Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro. The Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro recently went on sale and I decided to pick up a pair due to the great reviews. I'm a massive fan of the Pixel Buds Pro and love the noise cancelling and feed forwarding features, which I cover off in my previous video. Sadly, there are two bugs I experienced with the Pixel Buds Pro, one of which is to do with compatibility with my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. On a happier note, one feature that both earbuds have is the ability to adjust the equalizer settings. I'm not an audiophile, but I do listen to music and podcasts for many hours each week. However, I've never really understood or delved into how equalizer settings work. It's not really clear which EQ profile you need to use for different types of music, so I decided to do some research and share my findings with you. I do have a quick disclaimer though, I'm not a musician and I'm not an audio expert, and also music is very subjective. I've tried to base this video on some principles I discovered from real experts online. The purpose of the video is really to extrapolate that knowledge for you to use with your own Buds 2 Pro for the best experience. Also, one thing I've learned in my research is that most, maybe all audio producers probably don't want listeners to adjust the equalizer settings at all. They may argue that their songs and audio have been engineered the way it's meant to be heard. However, everyone's listening experience can be very different, and not all earphones and earbuds are created equally. The varying quality and design of every device means that getting a little bit of extra help from changing the EQ settings can make a lot of difference. Listeners' preferences can be very different, so it's definitely worth exploring making adjustments to suit your tastes, in my opinion. The Buds 2 Pro EQ settings can be found in the Galaxy Wearable app under Earbud Settings and then Equalizer. There are 6 preset profiles to choose from. Each one presents tweaks to the frequencies emitted by the earbuds to create different audio effects. The first option is the default setting where there are no changes made by your phone and the earbuds. What you're listening to in this setting is the final mix the producer created for the master recording. The other settings are a mix of obvious and less obvious options for an average person like myself. Bass boost is pretty straightforward based on its description. It increases the deep resonant sounds within a song or audio file to achieve that booming, vibrating sound. Similarly, treble boost increases the prominence of the sounds on the opposite end of the scale to the bass, so audio may sound more tinny or sharp. However, soft, dynamic and clear are much less obvious and require more explanation, which I cover off in the next chapter of my video. If you simply want to learn which EQ profile to use with different types of music, skip ahead in the video to the chapter after this next one. So if you're like me, you might want some more information on what the scale in the EQ settings actually means. The graphic in the app represents the audio frequency scale, measured in Hertz from 63 through to 16,000. Hertz are the units used to define the properties of any sound you hear, a bit like the temperature scale for heat measured in Celsius or Fahrenheit. In the Buds 2 Pro EQ settings, the scale can be broken out into approximate sections to represent what you can hear in your ear. Between the 63 to 125 Hz frequency is approximately the lower bass range for the deepest resonant sounds. A lot of dance and electronic music will make use of this frequency. 125 to 250 is the frequency for more mid-bass sounds for more traditional instruments like bass guitars, kick drums and classical instruments like timpani drums. 250 to 500 is considered the upper bass region for deeper notes from instruments like pianos and guitars. 500 to 1000 Hz is considered the lower mid-range where vocals and more stringed instruments and percussion instruments can be heard. 1000 to 2000 Hz is more central part of the mid-range, capturing more sounds from vocals and even more varied instruments. 2000 to 4000 Hz covers the upper mid-range and higher notes of different instruments, including more vocal spectrum. A lot of higher frequency stringed instruments like violins or woodwind instruments would occupy this range. 4000 to 8000 Hz covers even higher frequencies. Any instruments that can achieve really high notes will be captured in this range. Finally, 8000 to 16,000 Hz is reserved for the sounds at the very limit of the average human hearing. Depending on your age or hearing function, you might not hear sounds in this range at all. So based on the available information in the previous chapter of the video, here are my suggestions for the best EQ settings to use depending on the type of music or audio that you're listening to. Bass boost seems perfectly calibrated to listen to electronic dance music. EDM really makes use of the deep bass frequencies more often than not. You can see from the chart that the lower frequencies are significantly increased before tapering off around the mid-range. The profile goes on to subdue the upper mid-range before boosting the very extreme high frequencies, which will cover a lot of the synthesized sounds from electronic instruments. The soft profile is almost identical to bass boost, but you can see from the frequency profile that it crushes the upper high frequencies. This profile seems ideal for relaxing R&B, lo-fi or chill hop music, where you still want the resonant bass but cuts some of the more piercing sounds. Soft also seems ideal for older recordings where the quality of the original recording equipment or mixing might not be as refined as modern music. I could see this profile being great for removing high frequency imperfections where there's scratching sounds from recordings from vinyl records. Meanwhile, it will provide a richer sound for the bass frequencies that may have been lost or flattened. Dynamic is a really interesting one, which I think is perfect for most music across most genres. As you can see from the profile, it boosts the lower frequencies but really pumps up the much higher frequencies. Dynamic seems an ideal fit for pop music where you want to hear the bass line, but maybe the other instruments are potentially less important in the lower mid-range. However, the high frequency range will make synthesized sounds stand out. Dynamic feels like a good catch-all for rock music too. It's a little too soft on the lower mid-range around the 500Hz where most guitars and drums will reside, but it's better than the clear profile where you lose the bass guitars altogether. Hip-hop also sounds great in this profile as you can still appreciate the bass line depending on the song, but the higher frequencies lend themselves to the spoken word, making it much better so you can hear the lyrics. Surprisingly, I also found that dynamic works really well for country music. I wasn't sure if increasing the low-end frequencies to increase the bass would be too much, with the drums and the bass line drowning out the other melodies. However, it makes sense in hindsight because a lot of country music is made appealing by a constant underlying beat. The final thing I notice about the dynamic profile is that it really helps out with the audio for older music in general. Some artists' early albums from before the 2000s tend not to be that well mixed. If the earlier music hasn't been remastered for modern audio equipment, applying the dynamic profile really helps with making the playback more pleasant. The clear profile crushes the low-end frequencies, removing a lot of the lower bass but maintains some resonance. Meanwhile, it pumps up the very high frequencies like the dynamic profile. It would suggest that the profile might be best suited to orchestral or chamber music where violins and higher pitched instruments are featured. Stripping out the bass keeps focus on the other parts of the arrangement. Opera, a cappella and vocal solo music also sound great where you can make out the individual voices. I also found that the clear profile was the best fit for indie music where acoustic instruments were used. Small ensemble bands benefited from having a little less bass and a better focus on the mid and high frequencies versus the other EQ profiles. This extends into country music ballads too, where there's a little bit more focus on the vocals. Treble boost actually gave me the hardest time trying to find a good application for the profile. You can see from the curve it's pretty similar to the clear profile but further boosts the lower mid-range and doesn't taper off at the very highest frequencies, unlike the clear profile. This suggests that it's implemented for vocals or instrumental solos for traditional instruments. However, this didn't really account for including the very high frequencies too. Then it dawned on me that hi-hats and cymbals would feature in that range, and a lot of wind instruments would probably fit into the general 500Hz bracket, so this is probably ideal for jazz music. The dynamic mode might be a better choice if you prefer hearing more of the bass line in jazz, but I did find instruments like the double bass overwhelming for me personally on close listening. Possibly the best use of the treble boost profile is for podcasts and audiobooks. Again, removing the bass makes listening to the spoken word much easier in most environments. The focus on the higher frequencies helps clarify the pronunciation of words more clearly. Thank you for watching, and as always, it would be great if you were to like the video and subscribe to my channel for more content on personal technology and the connected home.